I didn't break the cycle of abuse. I was hurt when I was young and then hurt others in ways that are disgusting and vile. I want to address these, even though no one asked me to do this. To preface this, no one in this video will be named, and I will try to not have any memories that are shared that may shed light on who they are. If I need names or details, it will be stuff like A, B, etc. Everyone will be referred to as they/them pronouns, so as to not point any more details towards gender and identities. I'm doing this not because I want to hide these people, but rather I know at least one party wants nothing to do with me, and I don't want this to haunt them by bringing unwanted attention to them, especially as I know people can be cruel to victims. Anyone mentioned in this can speak up if they want and share their sides of the story. I will not fight back against anyone who does. I want to start off by explaining how I joined the internet and how it all led to this happening. But let me be crystal clear right off the bat. This is not meant to be seen as a woe is me, this means all my actions are excusable sort of thing. There is nothing that can excuse the actions I do. I don't want to be defended, nor can I. Everything I've done is undefendable in my eyes. I think the comments will be on for this video, but if I get even a single comment trying to defend my actions, I'm turning them off and adding a disclaimer in the description. I know how the internet is, and I know there will be at least one person who thinks I didn't do anything wrong, so let me just say this as clear as day. I fully disagree with you. If any of my words seem like I'm excusing my actions, you can call it out, and I will read and listen. I just want to give the full picture here, so thank you for listening, and I hope you're able to understand the right perspective here. Please note, I will try to be as serious as possible while doing this, but I may make a comment or two, at my own expense, that are unserious, or the background footage might not be the best. But everything in regards to other people will be handled with respect as best as I can. I just don't want it to be a black screen the entire time, as then no one would watch it. I will use videos from only myself or screenshots that relate to what I'm speaking about currently. I joined the internet officially when I was around 11 via Sonic Roleplay Facebook pages. Okay, let's back up a bit. It was 2012-ish, and it was very common to make Facebook pages for fictional characters, so people did this with their OCs or real characters. I found someone's Sonic OC named Carly the cat and stole the art for her. Sorry, I was a stupid child, and bam, I made my very own Facebook page. My Facebook page was not very popular, but I made some mutuals on Facebook eventually. I one day roleplayed with other pages which included a Sonic character, like the main blue guy himself. I remember having a bit of a crush on literal Sonic, and when we messaged, I remember a scene that happened. The characters were getting closer, and I believe they were at Sonic's house for a date or something, and Sonic asked Carly if she would still love him if he had an STD. I didn't know what that was, but said of course I would still love him. He seemed thankful at the response. This was my first experience with a, likely, grown-ass person being weird. Or maybe it was also a child who was clueless. I guess we'll never truly know, even though I remember thinking they were so mature and typed so well, but I assumed they were likely my age at the time. The classic internet logic of everyone being your age, no matter what. I don't really remember details with the Facebook pages after that. I can't remember who else I spoke to before my parents made me shut it down. Unfortunately, I'm someone who struggles a lot with memory issues due to trauma, which are unrelated to this all, mostly. So it's hard to remember everything, but that sticks out in my mind as one of the first experiences with NSFW content being shoved in your face as a child. After that, I joined sites like Quotive and DeviantArt because I wanted to make friends with people who also enjoyed Minecraft YouTubers like Team Crafted. I made friends online via DeviantArt, friends who I do genuinely think at least most of them were close to my age. I wrote fanfics with some underlying sexual themes because it was normal. I was introduced to fanfics that had NSFW content, so I would write it too, right? Like how it was normal to see my mutuals post NSFW art of Minecraft skins, which included content that couldn't have been legal and leaned more towards assault. It felt normal. I sound insane saying this. Next, I joined Wattpad and Tumblr. This was all around the age when I was 12. I actually started gaining traction in the Minecraft YouTuber fandom on both Wattpad and Tumblr. I don't know when it started, but getting asked to write full-blown smut was a thing. I can't remember if it started first on DeviantArt or Tumblr, but it happened. I don't know if I was honest about my age on these sites. I don't think so, but I would also start posting pictures of my full face and also where I lived on Tumblr. So even if I wasn't honest, they saw what I looked like, and I looked like a child. I don't know if people asking me to write porn about real people were also dorky tweens/young teens, but it happened. Writing smut, posting weird shit, all of this was so normalized. I do not ever want to go back to 2013 to 2015, but if I could, I'd try to protect myself from all of this. I don't know the ages of everyone who talked to me. I know some were older than me, and I know some were around my age. I don't know the ages of everyone who joined my tiny chats I would host, which always had someone join, even though it was a private room, and be an old naked guy in a tub. Classic 2013. It's like how I don't know the ages of those who shipped me when I was 12 to 14 with the grown man YouTuber who was 19 or older, which I do need to detour and talk about this because this is a moment I didn't remember as clearly until looking back for this video, and it's absolutely horrifying to me now as a full-grown adult. One of the people who vocally shipped us was a friend of said YouTuber. Ashley Marie Gaming, who was 18/19 around the time, was a Minecraft YouTuber I became mutuals with on Tumblr, and I want to doubt she knew my age, but having her say in a Q&A on YouTube that she shipped me and one of her colleagues, it was odd. Unfortunately, her channel seems to have been bought out and now the video itself isn't available. However, I have a lot of proof of the fact. I had to go deep into my Tumblr to find some proof, so enjoy the 2014 stuff. All the blocked out words is just my dead name. I thought these screenshots would be all I had until I found an audio recording on my Tumblr of this happening.
Like my favorite at the moment is Craft, which is this girl on Tumblr called Girly Shippings, who's also known as I ship her as Craft Ball. Yeah. And also TBN Judy.
I need to also note that I had also received written NSFW fics of me and this man, who, by the way, goes by Lachlan and is a Fortnite YouTuber now, for some context, as well as drawn NSFW content of me and another party I was dating in 2014. I know for a fact this was done by someone the exact age of me though, so I can chalk it up to being young and stupid, but it doesn't leave you. To be clear, I don't know if the people who sent anonymous asks about it were around my age at the time, but I know the person who wrote and drew most of this was my age, because it was the other party involved. Consider this a reminder that no matter what happened to me at this point in my life, it doesn't excuse my future action. I apologize again if it seems I'm trying to use this as an excuse. Going back to friends I made within fandom, I do remember the age of one friend I knew. Let's call them A. A was 5 years older than I was, making them at least an adult while I was a young teen. I don't remember how old I was when we first met, but we were friends till I was at least 15. We met through these Minecraft YouTubers for sure, but I can't really remember details, though we mostly talked about anime after a while. They were weird. I remember weird conversations and topics getting brought up. Talking about inappropriate shows together, getting recommended old classic yaoi that's straight up porn. I wish I had more pictures and stuff, but I'm afraid I don't. In a way, I feel bad for looking back and thinking, oh, that's kind of grooming? They didn't mean it, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't matter if they meant it or not. They still did. I found their blog again, and two of their most used tags are my name and my dead name. The tags aren't weird, it's just usually cute animals and also anime boys we enjoyed together, but it makes my mouth taste sour now. Don't worry though, over this time, I had friends my own age as well. I had a best friend who was my same age, and we would roleplay these real people, turned OCs in our head, but the problem was these roleplays would get sexual. I didn't think it was weird at the time They were my age, so it didn't matter to me. Just young teenagers being weirdo fangirls together. Obviously, I shouldn't have been having those NSFWs conversations anyways, neither should they. But it happened, and it happened again with the future ex of mine, except that got even more sexual as we were dating, and it felt fine. That's way farther down the line, though, closer to 2017, and it's mostly irrelevant to the story, besides the fact that this is a repeat problem. To talk about myself again, when I was around 14, my mental health got even worse. It got elevated due to a move and losing all of my IRL friends. It boiled over when I basically wrote a pre-suicide note and said I couldn't really go to school anymore, and my family listened. I started doing half days for the rest of 8th grade while I was still going to counseling, with the main goal being to get me back into normal school. This feels irrelevant to mention, but I promise it's important to understand some things and how chronically online I became. Counseling was horrific for me and made me feel awful constantly, so it's safe to say I never officially went back to school. Because of all of this happening in my life, a lot of the time blended together for me. Staying up all hours of the night, sleeping 16 hours or more, going through horrific things. I spent all my time online. I went in and out of fandoms, losing friends left and right from being a bad friend. The days blended together and I felt as though I stopped aging. Almost like a bit of age regression. I was a teenager forever as I wasn't actually going through with life and important life goals. I never even made it to high school officially. My mindset was I was still a teenager even as I got older and older. This also may be one of the reasons for my memory problems, though I'm not positive. I joined some new fandoms like AFMAO and similar. That is where this really begins. This is why I'm making this video. It was in 2017 when I joined the AFMAO fandom. I was 16 years old. I met some friends in the fandom as I started to edit, and it was fun. I met one person, we'll call them B, and we were fast friends. I think B was around 14 when we met in 2018, but I can't remember exact ages as it's been a while. We mostly talked OCs actually, sharing our little characters together. It did turn a bit NSFW at times, which is deeply wrong of me. I should have known better than to share those things with someone younger than me like that, but I just enabled it. In my mind, we were the same age practically, and it didn't matter. I also later met C, and we'd become very close. They were also 2 years younger than me, if I recall. We clicked instantly, and I found their friendship incredible. I would make NSFW jokes like with B, but that was mostly about fandom characters and happened less often, if I recall. This is important for things later. I remember my conversations with B never got too bad until I met Z. Z was around 13 when we first met, and I was 17 in 2019. B and Z met and became good friends as well, with some one-sided crushing on the side. I bring that up because I remember really pushing for Z to go for it, to take a step with their feelings, which felt like a really weird overstep. I had no business talking about this person's feelings and saying they should go for someone else. Not in the context of everything else, at least. I felt like a great friend to both of them, which I wasn't at all. We'll get back to Z in a minute. Let's talk about the group as a whole first. I had other friends, but they were a bit less connected to the main core four. 2 of the friends were nearly my exact age, so I did have friends closer to my age. Most of the friends I had seemed to be around 15 while I was 17 though. This just feels important to mention. Over time, B, C, and Z plus me, all became a friend group. C and I would joke that we were married, and because of this, so did Z and B. There was a point where C proposed to me, and then we would joke that we were engaged, which the engagement eventually led to an actual marriage. From what I remember about the art drawn for us, it was just us holding hands or hugging. Though I did find a clip where C and I were having a voice chat and we used a magic 8-ball and asked it questions. One of C's questions was, "Will Ty ever kiss me?" I'm not going to lie. I remember me making a lot of the jokes about us being married, but I didn't remember how many C made back. I thought I was the only one making these jokes and it just made them super uncomfortable or whatever. Apparently it was more equal. That still obviously doesn't make it okay, but at one point, I did mistakenly think I had gained feelings for C. Looking back, it was just the case of me being aromantic and thinking when I care for someone so deeply, it means romance. This was a very common thing for me back then. But I remember confining in Z, saying I didn't like this and wished it wasn't the case because the gap made me uncomfortable. Thankfully, I can see now this wasn't the case. I can also let you know I never acted on these quote-unquote feelings. It was just a secret. Eventually, B and I had a really stupid fight and I ended the friendship very poorly. B was obviously hurt. I had even sent them a gift in the mail as we were in the same country. Eventually, this made both C and Z drift away from B for a bit. I wish I remembered more about my friendship with B. I remember after the friendship ended, seeing them use the word traumatizing to describe our friendship, but I genuinely cannot remember if there was an exact reason outside of me just being a weirdo, because I don't know if they had realized that quickly how weird I was, because I know it took some other people a lot longer to figure it out. I cannot remember exactly what happened, except the fact that I did not help them when they were sad, like incredibly sad. I helped them at first, but then I stopped. Meanwhile, I kept helping Z while they were also incredibly sad. I'm sure I did worse, but I genuinely can't remember, and it's so frustrating and annoying to me. So to B, if you ever see this, I'm sorry for how I hurt you, and I hope you've been able to heal from it. Now, I need to go back to Z, because this whole thing is about Z. When they first messaged me, I remember feeling uncomfortable about their age. They were a child. I didn't want to deal with kids as a cool, older teen. But if it was just talking fandom, why not? Every day of my life, I regret that choice. I wish I could go back in time and punch myself in the face and scream at him. Why on earth would you befriend someone that young while you already can't talk to people normally? I think you know where this goes. It started off with us talking about AFMAL characters. A few sex references got thrown in because I'm disgusting. Unknown to me at the time, but Z had a horrible friend group right before they met me. Friends who would fake love them and then shit talk them in other chats, groomers, just a whole lot of horrible people. So Z didn't really know how to navigate friendships healthily, and neither did I, though the difference is my actions were inexcusable and they were just being a naive child. They clung on to me, viewing me as a cool older friend type, and I betrayed them and their trust by just being an awful friend and human. Eventually, Z and I started talking about our OCs together. We started shipping our OCs together, which is harmless if it's done in the right hands, but the shipping turned into talking about them intimately, like sexually. Let me be clear, we never fully roleplayed the characters having sex. Despite what I've explained to you so far, you'll be surprised to know I am quite asexual and have been ever since like 5th grade. It was more fade to black for all these mentioned NSFW roleplays. But the build-up was there, and talking about these characters intimately was very weird. Talking about the characters' kinks and all was still on the table. We eventually made characters together, and I grew quite fond of a few of them, as did Z with others, which will be relevant later. You know what's even worse? A lot of the time, our shared OCs would be in a high school setting. The two OCs we mostly shipped together were adults in their own canons. We would high school AU them. Sex still happened in these. Yes, high schoolers have sex, but we don't need to talk about it. It makes my head hurt just thinking about it. With all of this weird behavior, it's important to bring up the fact that I wasn't even a good friend outside of this all. Z was young and struggling heavily with so much, including with things like self-harm and suicidal thoughts. I always wanted to help people, and so every time they would graphically vent on their close friend story in tiny text or post vent art on their spam, I would reply with comfort. I wasn't good at fixing their problems, but I could at least provide comfort or distraction if needed. In theory, this is really nice. But because I was also struggling and wasn't getting this in return, I think I felt as though it was unfair. No one is obligated to walk you off of that cliff. Friends are supposed to comfort you and be there for you, but they don't have to convince you to stay alive for hours and hours nearly every single night. This goes both ways. Because I was older, Z looked at me as someone to trust, but because my brain couldn't register how old I was at times, and also because I'm just stupid and ignorant, I viewed us as equals. No child should have to walk someone much older off a cliff like that. I still felt 14 to 15 years old when all the trauma happened and I stopped moving forward in life. I will never defend or excuse any of the actions I did. What I did was disgusting and I should be held accountable. This is why I'm making this. Because there's people in my life who will never know this side. And I can't just let Z speak out and think I'm just living my best life unbothered, pretending nothing happened. I agree with what Z and others think of me, that I'm disgusting and my actions are wrong and immoral. But sadly, this is just the start. For some reason, it's like I felt like Z owed me everything. This is an insane ask. None of your friends owe this to you, but especially not those younger than you. If we were equals, if Z and I were the same age, some of their actions would be seen as bad as well. Because I was older, it shouldn't have been like that ever. I felt almost protective over Z because, let me be clear, no matter what my horrific actions were, I did view Z as a younger sibling type friend. I would stress over their safety in ways that overstepped a normal amount. I knew Z struggled with self-harm, and so I would be worried when they were away for a while. I'd be stressed and anxious all the time. It didn't help that most of the time, if a relapse did happen, they would post about it in some way on their story or in a post, which felt like it validated my worries. They were away, they were in danger. Because Z was struggling a lot and it impacted me because of it, I just wish I handled our relationship better. I wish Z felt better. It was a lot at once and I didn't help at all. Besides the vague details I've mentioned, Z was going through a lot behind the scenes, but that's not my story to tell. Z is an adult now. They can do whatever they want. At first, Z didn't expect me to help them. I wasn't obligated to, after all, but because I wanted to. I think it began to be expected of me. When I didn't reply, posts would get deleted instantly instead of waiting it out, and I'd feel bad. I know people will hear this and say that it is not healthy that they acted like this, but I need to remind you they were a dumb, young teenager. We exchanged gifts for Christmas in 2019. There was actually nothing wrong with this, simple gifts like dice sets and blankets, but I still don't think we should have done this. Maybe it's because of everything that happened, I don't know. It might make me a horrible person to admit I still have many of the things I was gifted. The dice is still on my shelf. The blankets are at my parents' home. I don't know if it's because 2020 began, but something changed. Z and I had our fights, usually because I was extremely petty and thought I was above everyone. I think I wanted to guide Z away from problematic stuff, but I don't even know my own logic. But everything escalated. We would argue more, and between me working with the public as the pandemic started, and then Z starting high school and then it switching to online school only, it was all so stressful. I stopped being a good friend, though I'd argue I was never a good one to begin with. I just got worse and worse. When looking back and talking it over, many of the moments seemed to gloss over for me, but Z remembered everything, which makes total sense. Z was going through a much more developmental part of their life while I wasn't. During late 2019/early 2020, I also started experiencing an unrelated traumatic event. It has nothing to do with all of this, but it caused me a lot of emotional and physical distress and pain, which led me to be more emotional and ask for more from my friends. If it wasn't already clear, Z and I were both unhealthily codependent on each other, and it was really bad. I started feeling like no one cared for me. I felt suicidal again for the first time in years. It was not good. I would post horrible art vents more often too. They were so bad and honestly kind of cringy looking back. A lot of my stuff was repressed, but for specific moments, I had an app. vent, which has now been taken offline. I'd post stuff with emojis as their names to keep it a secret, and it's how I remember some of the exact events that happened in my friendships. Like the times I would deactivate my Instagram for hours at a time without notice, and then be shocked when Z was scared that I was hurt or away. Just a lot of totally healthy stuff, you know? Even though no one really followed me there, I feel like I still painted myself in a better light in these vents because I never said how old Z was, which would explain a lot of their actions because children do dumb shit sometimes. That's fine. I can't exactly remember when this happened in the timeline, but we have to introduce someone else. Let's call them F. F was a fanfic writer on Tumblr who wrote these incredible fics for a fandom I wasn't in. It was a small, AFMAO adjacent fandom, so reading it felt like I was reading original content. They were extremely talented in writing. It amazed and inspired me to work on my own fics. I remember they said they were a minor, but because of their writing, I assumed 16 to 17 years old, while I was 18 at the time. They wrote about serious topics such as abuse and essay in a very mature and well done way. That was a great read. I don't know how we ended up actually talking, but we did. I didn't even watch the show they were writing these fanfics about, but we still talked about it, and turns out they knew enough about AFMAO where we could talk about that as well. Eventually, we stopped talking because in an old vent, I mentioned that I distanced myself due to the nature of some of their fics. I had a few mutuals that I met through C, a bunch of artists in the fandom. It was around 4 of them, so names don't matter right now. One day, I noticed one of them unfollowed me and another blocked me. I was very confused as to me, it came out of nowhere. I mentioned it to C because we had mutual friends, and C said they knew exactly what happened. F had reached out to these people F didn't even know but saw I interacted with, and explained I made them uncomfortable. Turns out F was closer to 14/15 years old. I have to be honest, I don't remember talking to F that much. I think we only talked for a couple of months, if that, but whatever I said, it was disgusting enough to make them upset. I don't even remember their Tumblr URL, but I did find a screenshot I posted on my Instagram story, and I think it was with them. If it was, it goes to show how gross the topics were. It doesn't matter if I was joking, having fun, whatever. It's disgusting, and it makes sense that they were uncomfortable. Apparently, C was one of the people that got reached out to as well. C responded and said they thought I didn't mean it like that. C defended me. I remember being shaken by this and really stressed. Unfortunately, not stressed enough to where I stopped. Now let's go back to C for a bit. Throughout the years, C and I were close friends. I considered them my closest, best friend, but always said they were one of my best friends as to not upset Z. I still thought Z was a best friend, just not the top of the list like C. We'd video call to watch shows together, play Minecraft, goof around. When Z and I would be fighting, because that happened a lot, I'd go to C to distract myself from it. All was going well until December 2020, when C very maturely messaged me and said they think that we should stop being friends. It came out of nowhere for me, even though it probably felt obvious to them. I reacted as calm as I could, as I said I understood. I wasn't going to force them to be friends with me, and that was that. I felt broken. C and I were good friends, but I look back and wonder what happened. Personally, I think it was a lot of the jokingly married comments or what happened with F. Truly, it could be anything, and I would never get closure on what happened. Because a little while after that, in early 2021, they deleted all of their social media and would eventually fall off the face of the earth. Inactive on most sites, hasn't been on Steam in years. After all this time, I genuinely thought they were dead. I have tried to reach out to apologize via an email I had, but no response. I do have one small hope that they are alive, but we can get to that later. Just know that this had a domino effect on all my relationships. Now heading towards 2021, I was emotionally checked out. Sometime in 2020, Z had turned their IRL Instagram into a private venting one, but I unfollowed it near the end of 2020 and told them about it. I knew it was too much for me in my current state. Once they knew this, vents were posted on their public side account / story again. I think they wanted the support I gave them, but I started to stop not caring, but I just stopped feeling anything for a while. What's embarrassing to admit is that I still also would post vent art on public, which is like, girl, you're grown. This is probably hard to believe, but I personally didn't like when NSFW jokes were made that weren't OC related. But because Z was so used to talking about this weird OC stuff, it slipped through. I had made a promise to myself to call this out when it happened, and I failed. Z would sometimes send TikToks that were NSFW in nature, just words or implied stuff, and it always made me deeply uncomfortable. It wasn't like they were saying, imagine this with blank OC. It was just the post by itself. But this was my fault. I welcomed Z into this space, acting like it was okay with OCs, but whoa, let's not get too personal. Somewhere in either December 2020 or January 2021, Z mentioned to me that they would be going for a surgery very soon, but it's one that's a bit complicated to heal from. I can only remember being told about this surgery in like few days before it happened, but I'm sure I was told sooner and forgot. When they went for it, I was so emotionally checked out and needed space. I felt guilty for not being there for them during their recovery, but I was off the internet for a bit. This was when Z declined a lot more, and yet I kind of became numb to it all. I've never publicly fully admitted to this, so this is something I don't think Z even knew. One night in 2021, I attempted to take my own life. It failed, of course, but after that, my mental health was at an all-time low, but I didn't get help. I didn't do anything. Again, this isn't trying to be, oh, woe is me, I'm suffering. I'm just trying to paint the full scene. Was I an awful person? Yes. Being depressed doesn't excuse any of my behavior and never will. No one can use their depression to excuse their awful behaviors. I started thinking horrible things too. When Z would post their vents saying they were gonna kill themselves, I started thinking, oh no, but hey, now I can too. I would reply to some of their vents just plainly saying this was unhealthy to post, and it would turn into a fight. I even said, hey, I unfollowed your vent to stop seeing this, so why is it here? Which is not what you want to hear when you're suicidal, let's just say. If someone said that to me, woof. I turned into a major asshole when I was suffering. Z didn't deserve, even if their coping methods were harmful. So when also being disgusting and weird, I was also just being an asshole. During one of our many arguments, they even admitted that they did move to posting vents on their story again because no one interacted with their vents on their private. This is when I would really do my whole deactivating Instagram for hours, but then being upset when people didn't notice. It was either they didn't notice because it was only like 16 hours, like come on, drama queen, or they would notice and it would freak someone out. At one point, I stopped helping at all. I stopped replying to Z's vents. I felt nothing. I did this before sometimes too, but I would post about stuff that Z happened to like that I hated and was shitty about on my Instagram. I wouldn't mention Z at all, but still, this anime you like? Trash, because the MC was like slightly biphobic one time. A Dream SMP and all their friends? Yeah, that's actual trash, but also Z was the exact demographic for that, so of course they fell into it in 2020. It started getting petty when we went back and forth about an anime, which resulted in Z telling me they needed a break from me. I said cool, and then later that day, Z said they couldn't even last a day without me and that they loved me platonically. We used to say I love you to each other all the time. I'm a person who likes to say I love you to my friends. This was when I really started to question what this friendship had done to both of us, because I felt the same way sometimes. I thought I couldn't live without them. It sounds insane to say, but it's true. I was so worried they couldn't live without me, I couldn't live without them. Sometime in early to mid 2020, I did something awful. This is put here in the timeline because I mistakenly thought it was in 2021 when writing this, but looking back, it actually happened earlier. but I need to address this. Before this moment, when we talked about OCs and things got NSFW, it never actually went anywhere, as I've explained already. Fade to black and all like that. But then, one day, I took their OCs that we shipped together playfully, and in a Google Doc they had the link to, I wrote for them an NSFW fic of these two characters. And it was a full-blown fic. They watched me type this, and they would comment notes on it as I did. What the fuck was I thinking? It was fucking disgusting, and the fact I did this has genuinely kept me up at night. I'm thankful to say I have gotten the chance to apologize to Z for this. This fic is lost to time now, and I'm glad for it. I feel such a deep regret and sorry that I did that to Z, but also so much disgust, it's unreal. Some people would like to pretend that this didn't happen because this is such an uncomfortable thing to do to someone. I am not one of those people. I did something absolutely disgusting by doing that, and I should be held accountable for it. When I did this, I was 18 years old and Z was 14 years old. At one point, I started heavily fantasizing about disappearing, kinda like C, just falling off and never existing again. And then by March of 2021, I realized I didn't really want to be friends with those under the age of 17, or so I thought. I told Z that I needed to step away from our friendship for a while. Hilariously, I even worried about being seen as weird for my friendships with people younger than me. I was so close to getting it, but alas, not yet, because past me is a fucking idiot. Eventually, after a few weeks of our weird back and forth friendship, Z confronted me with a letter asking what my deal was. I don't remember the details, but an old vent says it didn't go horribly, and I admitted I didn't want to be friends with someone under the age of 17. So it's a start. At the time, I didn't know they were posting vents on TikTok as well, but they were. It was late April, and I somehow still thought Z was my best friend, but then I found out Z and B became friends again. I don't know why I cared about this. My falling out with B felt so small, and also your friends are allowed to like others that you dislike within reason. Yet in May, I had a realization. I felt bad saying it, but I didn't think I had a best friend anymore after C. I started putting up more boundaries, and I was really on a downward spiral leading up to June. I was being an asshole in every way you can imagine. I can't even list every single way here because it would be too fucking long. Sometime in June, Z finally asked if I considered them a friend, and I admitted I think we should just be mutuals and not friends, which is stupid. I should have fully ripped off the band-aid, but I truly, genuinely thought we could one day be friends again when we both weren't so mentally ill. Remember the turning TikToks into vents? I had a TikTok I didn't use often, and I didn't follow Z, but would peek at their page as I knew it from the hundreds of TikToks they'd send me. TikTok used to do that thing where when you sent a link to a TikTok, it would say at the top or bottom, follow XYZ on TikTok. So I knew their profile. I thought they wouldn't care about me knowing their profile, otherwise they would just send me the downloaded videos. When we weren't talking, I peeked at their TikTok to see if they were okay and found out they were posting stuff about me. No names were mentioned, but it was so obvious if you knew them that it was about me. It just felt so jarring, and something in my brain just clicked, and I went, this friendship is over now. Turns out, though, they also didn't want me seeing their TikToks and blocked me after I liked a post that wasn't about me. This is genuinely something I didn't know, and I feel bad about it because I was overstepping. Now, this is where I overstep even more. I used to internet stalk old friends, and so I started to do the same to Z's TikToks. I don't know. My logic was because I was worried. That was my excuse, but it was a poor one. We were weird mutuals for a bit, but this felt too much. I unfollowed them, and when asked, I said I really needed space. But unfortunately, at this point, I still thought there was a chance we could be friends later on. I feel bad for unintentionally dragging them through this, the will they, won't they be friends of it all. Now, this is where I'm going to sound insanely ridiculous. This will also make it obvious who Z is to a very small group of people. So if you know who Z is, please do not bug them with this. Let them heal from this all and do not mention them by name. Any mentions of them further will be deleted. Z and I talked OCs, and over time we made a lot of shared OCs together. There were some they cared for more, and there were some I cared for more. This is where Valentine comes in. Details are not important, but you have to know Valentine is a character I deeply cared for. His stories always made me very happy, and I enjoyed him plus his best friend Jeremy's dynamic. As this friendship started to end, I was horrified to realize I couldn't leave Valentine behind in this friendship. While I deleted profiles for all other shared OCs, I kept Valentine and Jeremy's up. I should have mentioned this to them right away, but I didn't, and of course they noticed. And it hurt them, because to them, I cared about a character more than them. They confronted me on this, and I doubled down. When our friendship started out, I genuinely cared about Z more than myself. I cared for them an unhealthy amount, and I think Z knows that nowadays. But Valentine always brought me comfort and joy, while Z eventually didn't. Which feels awful to say even now. It feels awful to think of a character more highly than them. I told Z they could have every other OC we had, but I needed these two. I think they kept one of them, but I genuinely don't know anymore. The friendship officially ended, but I let them refollow me after a bit, still genuinely thinking we could be friends again when we healed. When our friendship ended, they were 15 and I was 19, both nearly to our birthdays as well. I just wish I could go back in time and stop myself from ever speaking to them. After losing my closest friend, I threw everything into Valentine. I avoided my own feelings and I started working on his story as hard as I could, trying to find happiness in this original character. I did learn later that during this time, Z went through horrible things outside of me, while also dealing with the pain that was left over from our friendship. That isn't relevant, and I will go into no detail, but it makes me feel so guilty that they suffered so much and I aided in it by just being a horrible friend. Why do I know this? Well, clues I've said along the way would show that Z and I have spoken since this, but there's a lot to go over before I get to that. Z and I were on and off mutuals for a few months before I fully cut them off. I would still periodically check their TikToks because, quote, I was worried, even though I should have respected their boundaries and not looked. Eventually, we both realized how bad our friendship was and we fully drifted. I started to check on them less and less before stopping altogether. Z made a public Spotify playlist about me. I checked on a few times, but I eventually forgot about that as well. The reason I think C was still alive was one of the last times I checked in on Z, I saw them use art I've never seen before. It looked like C's art style, and I believe Z had said it was from a friend off TikTok, and that's it. I could be wrong, but I genuinely believe that is their art. I just hope C is alright. I never got closure on C, and I never asked Z when we did speak. I've tried to reach out to C. I think they're lost to time. Eventually, one of mine and Z's shared friends unfollowed me, and I assumed it was because they took Z's side of the friendship ending, and I just kept going. My life moved on. I had began to realize that I was the problem in our friendship over time. I moved on. I grew as a person. Eventually, though, a silly art event came along that we both used to do. I saw the old art I did for them on my profile and realized that they could probably still see it too, even if we had each other blocked. So I decided to go through all the art I made for any old friends and change the thumbnail to be blacked out. I'm being so genuine when I say I picked this thumbnail because I thought my art was bad and I wanted to laugh at myself. A simple black thumbnail that said LOL in white writing. What my dumbass self didn't realize was that to others, literally ex-friends who don't like me anymore, it would look like I was laughing at them and haunting them. This is when Z spoke out against me on their story, which which I was sent by from someone who followed us both. This is the first time Z used the word groomer to describe me publicly, and it rocked me. They said I was their groomer and that I was, I believe, making fun of them. I was taken aback by the word. I always thought our conversations were weird and I was weird, but the wording surprised me. I wrote up a statement and put it up on a few different apps I use so people knew this story in a condensed version. The worst part of this all, before this happened, even though I knew I was a weirdo and awful, I was still angry at Z. I still would think petty things and think they were a horrible friend back to me. Seeing this post completely changed everything. It pains me to say this happened in 2023 and it took me that long to realize. It put it all into perspective because yeah, even if it wasn't my intention, what I did was grooming. A month or so after this was posted, Z messaged me and asked that I take down any art from them or any references to them on any of my characters because a few had slipped through or I forgot to take them down. I so desperately wanted to apologize to them for literally everything, but I knew Z just wanted this. They didn't want to talk. They just wanted any references to them down. So I said I would, and that was it. They reblocked me, and that was all. I desperately wanted a chance to talk to them, to apologize, but I knew I couldn't be the one to reach out. Who wants the creepy old groomer to reach out to them? Literally no one. The closest thing I would do was edit the very last Discord message I sent to them with an apology in the case that they ever went back to reread old messages like they used to do. They would see an apology, but I didn't expect anything. Life moved on, and although I was haunted by this and wrote an apology in my notes maybe 500 times, I never sent one. If they wanted to talk to me, they would reach out. And then it was 2024. August came around and I got into a weird headspace. I started to struggle a lot all at once and everything felt weird. It reminded me of how I felt when I was friends with Z a bit. And I remember shaking it off come on. It's 2024. We've moved on. This was in late August, around the 20th. And then I saw that on Instagram, I had a message request. One that had been sitting in my inbox since August 9th. It was from Z. I remember being frozen. I was in shock. They had messaged me from a side account mentioning that they didn't feel comfortable messaging me from their main. They asked for a genuine conversation with me now that they were an adult, and I accepted. I immediately apologized, and from that, the conversation spiraled. It spanned a few days because we have different time zones. We both work opposite shifts, day versus night, and we also would both write ginormous paragraphs each time. At first, Z seemed almost taken aback that I was actually apologetic. They seemed too kind at first, and I remember expressing how I was shocked by their kindness towards me. They were too kind to me, someone who hurt them. The anger seeped out a bit more as we kept talking, and it felt like a relief that they were actually angry. They were an adult and they were pissed that this happened to them. A lot of stuff was cleared up. We explained things and talked over everything. I learned a lot about Z, and they learned about me. We even updated a bit about our personal lives. Was that healthy to do? No, and we both acknowledged it, but it still felt right to do so. They said they still felt negative feelings towards me and were sure I felt the same way about them, but I said I didn't, and I meant that. If they had asked me over a year ago, yeah, I probably would have said that I was still a bit angry about everything. But after everything and doing so much reflecting, no, I wasn't angry at them anymore. I was angry at myself. They encouraged me to look at the playlist they made for me again, so I did. Singing romantic songs on the playlist made me sick to my stomach, like Casual by Chapel Roan. I cannot change how they view me and their own feelings, but stuff like that does sting, and it should. This whole conversation was incredibly taxing on my mental health while also being exactly what I needed for it. At the end of the conversation, they said they were going to send me screenshots of events they had posted privately about me. They said they didn't know why they were sending these. They knew it would hurt me, but they kind of wanted it to, so they sent the vents and the conversation ended. I was left with these images. I was honest and told them I may not look at them right away because their vents were one of the most mentally taxing parts of our friendship to me, but I ended up looking at them nearly instantly because it's me and We just do that. I won't go over what they said, but in one of them, they spoke about how ridiculous it was to think this, but they did believe my logic, that I felt as though I was younger than I was. I didn't even remember ever mentioning that to them, but that broke me because it was genuinely something I struggled with for a long time, but that doesn't justify or change how I acted towards them. They said a lot of mean things about me. They even used my name so people knew it, and all of that is justified. I sent one final message to let them know I did read those vents. They replied and said they'd block me again, and now that was officially it. Obviously, a lot happened during this conversation that I'm not talking about. No details are being mentioned here, and simply put, those are between us and us alone. This was their trauma, and I'm not going to spill every single detail in case it points to them or so happens to make me look better, or it's just none of your business, frankly. Because guess what? At the end of the day, it doesn't make me look better, and it never will. Nothing can justify any of this. I could tell this conversation meant a lot to them and was more healing than they thought it would be, which is what they did tell me. At the end of this conversation, I went back and forth on what to do. I kept the screenshotted vents for a while, but eventually I deleted everything. The chat, the screenshots. I knew if I kept these easily accessible, I would constantly be reading over them and feeling bad about myself. It's not like I'm trying to forget this conversation. That is something I will literally never be able to do. I just can't keep checking on this constantly, especially when I was going through such a bad mental state outside of this conversation. Whether or not someone wants to hear this, I needed to be able to heal and move on from this too. I can't just wallow in self-pity for the rest of my life. One of the things I do want to mention from the conversation was one thing I said to them. I said, I've been wanting to make content for a while now, but I've been hesitant because I think you would speak out against me, and I don't want to pretend like that didn't happen, like that none of this happened. And they replied saying they didn't know if they would be able to keep quiet if I did make content. They said they likely would speak out against me, and that's why I said I did not really want to make content publicly. So I'm addressing this. Not so I can then be like, oh boy, I'm free. No, this is part of me for the rest of my life. This is something I did as a young adult that is horrifying. I was 17 to 20 years old when this all happened, and I should have known better. I know some may look at this and be like, well, you were still young, and sure, I was still young. I did grow up thinking these things were normal to talk with people about, but I should have stopped sooner. I should have stopped when I first hurt someone. I shouldn't have ever had a chance to hurt someone. I shouldn't have ever started this. To Z, if you ever watch this, I hope you're well. If you want me to take this video down or edit it in any way, message me on Instagram or Discord. I'll likely private it to keep it up for myself, but no one else. Only if you want, 0 questions asked. There is just one last thing I have to admit to you. When we talked last, I lied about something. It was stupid, and I don't even know why I lied. You had mentioned being worried about seeing me in real life, admitting it was a wild fear because we live in different countries, and I lied and said I didn't remember where you live. Unfortunately, I do remember the city. Not the exact address or anything, but I said I only remembered the broader area. But no, I wish I didn't remember this. It would bring you peace of mind. If it helps, I will literally never ever go there anyways. I'm also sorry for the fact I remember things like this, and yet I couldn't remember other moments you brought up. You would bring up these moments that hurt you, and I really couldn't remember them. And it's so fucking annoying. I wish my memory wasn't fried. You deserve better than that. Thank you for the years you gave to me, and I hope you're genuinely happier nowadays. I know we share some fandom overlap, and so we could have mutuals. I even know we do share at least one for sure, but I hope you're able to get as far away from me as possible anyways. Finally, I want to introduce myself to you all. Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm currently 23 years old. This is how I looked like when I was friends with people like Z, and this is how I look now. Why show my face? I don't know. Z doesn't know how I currently look, and in the case they ever see this video, it may help to know what I currently look like. If all my previous statements aren't obvious enough, I'm very sorry for everything I've done, and I don't want to hide. But also, I just genuinely don't post my face a lot, which can feel like I'm hiding, when really I'm just not the most confident. So here, it makes sense to do in my mind. I completely understand if anyone views this video and doesn't want to be associated with me anymore. That is more than okay. I try my best nowadays to be a better person, and even though I fully regret and apologize for my past actions, I can't change the minds of people. If this changes your opinion of me, that's alright. I'm not going to try and beg people to stay, but I do hope my actions going forward will show you that I've changed. To put my money where my mouth is a bit, I have donated some money to charities for queer youth. It isn't much as I'd like, but unfortunately, I'm not made of money. I picked queer youth charities because as far as I know, everyone I hurt in this story was a queer youth. I wanted to do something at least partially meaningful. Again, this isn't a "see, I'm a good person" card, because even awful people can do things like this. If there was a way to donate directly to Z or C or F, I would do it in a heartbeat, but honestly, I don't know if they'd like that. The offer still stands though, if you ever see this. Thank you all for watching this video. It means the world to me if you stayed until the end. I don't know if this video will be posted before or after my next compilation videos, but those sorts of faceless videos will likely be the only ones I make publicly. There's a chance I'll make videos talking about media I like in the future, but that won't change anything. This video will always be up unless asked to be taken down by Z. I'll never hide this past. I will never hide these actions. So thank you again for watching.